Good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome to our study of steps to the Great Perfection. So as always, recognizing the value of studying and practicing the Dharma in terms of the needs of all sentient beings, then kindly generate the intentional bodhicitta. So in our study, we've completed the introductory material from the translators and so forth, and also we've looked at the origin of this entire teaching, which is a quote from the Sanje Sechikiju, the Tantra of the Only Offspring, and then the commentary by Garab Dorje and also commentary by Longchen Rabjam. So presently we're actually going to begin the actual text now. Which is then a work by Rinzin Jigme Lingpa, and it's Jigme Lingpa we can see on the left side of the screen. And in Tibetan this text is called Tarpe Temke. Actually the title is a bit longer than that, but the essence of it is Tarpe Temke, which means the steps to liberation. And this is coming from the tradition of the Great Perfection. The Great Perfection in and of itself is the path that takes the very ground of the mind, the original wakeful condition, as its path. Yet for most of us that still operate within a notion of time and space and are caught up with the constructions of what we call relative reality, then there is a path, and there is the ordinary mind that tends to be lost in confusion. So to integrate this, to bring this mind onto the path, there are the trainings that enable us to clearly prioritize the value of the practice of the path. And so within the preliminary practices, we then have the common preliminary practices of the sevenfold mind training. We have in the preliminary practices, we have what we call uncommon preliminaries, which are the 5 aspects of refuge, bodhicitta, vajrasattva, mandala offering, and guru yoga. But prior to that, we have some trainings in training the attitudes and our outlook in terms of contemplating certain realities. So this is what this instruction provides for us. And we have here, as the author of this work, one of the great masters of the Great Perfection, Rinzin Jigme Lingpa, who lived in the 18th and 19th century. Sorry. Yeah. I was a bit earlier than that. He's mainly 18th century. I forget his dates. Sorry. But anyway. And also Jigme Lingpa is closely associated with the great Longchen Rabjam. So we say, actually, Jigme Lingpa was born on the last week. It was the anniversary of Longchen Rabjam's passing. And Jigme Lingpa was actually born on that day. And later in his life, he practiced in retreat and there had repeated visions of Longchen Rabjam. So on the basis of that, we say Jigme Lingpa's mind and Longchen Rabjam's wisdom fused as one. And Jigme Lingpa was like inseparable from Longchen Rabjam. And what we have then of teachings from Jigme Lingpa is mainly the teaching known as the heart essence of the vast expanse, where vast expanse refers to Longchenpa. So Jigme Lingpa is regarded as a second Longchenpa and is then the person who really revitalized the teachings of the Great Perfection down to the present day. Of course, there was many other great perfection teachers in Tibetan Buddhism, Dunjim Lingpa and the Khyentses and so on. There's so many great masters, but if we look at the existence of the Nyingma teaching today and the Great Perfection teaching, so much of it is indebted to the teachings coming down from Jigme Lingpa. So we begin with homage to glorious Samantabhadra. And Samantabhadra is the primordial Buddha. This is the basis of all the victorious ones, or all the Buddhas, the past, present, and future. And in the absolute, this is the primordial ground of awareness. And yet for us who operate with the notion of time and space, then we speak about the primordial Buddha as going way back. And we also speak of a lineage then coming from Samantabhadra down to our present root teacher. So to connect with this disposition that is innate to us, particularly through the devotion that understands the inseparable abiding nature of Samantabhadra, yet also invokes Samantabhadra in the form and in terms of the lineage, then we begin with that. And then Jigme Lingpa describes Samantabhadra: your nature is perfectly and utterly pure, unconfined and unrestricted, unborn, unobstructed, and free of all elaboration, the innate primordial mind of enlightenment. It is timeless, an unconditioned and unchanging dimension with all supreme qualities. Beyond samsara, nirvana, and identity, primordial protector with your special qualities, to you I bow. So here we bow down to Samantabhadra as Samanta truly is, the original Buddha nature that is untainted, that is always there. It's not created. It's not something that can die. It's something that is unceasing. And it's free of any kind of characteristic and conceptual construction. And this is the original awakened state. It's beyond time, and it possesses all the qualities of enlightenment. So throughout our existence, we continually operate with a recognition of enlightened qualities, primarily kindness or compassion, strength, and wisdom. All such qualities arise from this unconfused, innate condition. So this primordial protector, let's see what the special 6 characteristics are. The 6 characteristics mentioned here refer to a way in which pure awareness appears to itself, emerges from the ground, individuates, is liberated through individuation, does not occur from something else, and abides in and of itself. So I think we'll get back to the details about this later on. Jigme Lingpa continues, the display of your manifest ground is like the moon's reflection in water. Your magnificence brings the ocean of existence to maturity. Manifest in the dimension of luminosity, an edge of magical illusion, second Buddha Padmasambhava, I make this offering to you. So as we bow down to this nature, then we also bow down to the way it manifests. And it manifests according to the disposition of sentient beings, to the degree that sentient beings have the merit and so forth, then the Buddha appears, just like a reflection of the moon in a vessel of water. Then we say that as long as there are vessels of water, the Buddha will manifest. So whenever there is the capacity of sentient beings, then the Buddha appears effortlessly without any kind of partiality. There's no notion I'm going to benefit those sentient beings and not those sentient beings. There's the complete presence for wherever there is openness. Also, we sometimes give the example of the sun that shines everywhere. So this display of the teaching is then like a net of magical illusion. It's something that appears yet has no intrinsic nature. And this dance of enlightenment as it manifests in this world is then particularly embodied in the life of Padmasambhava. So we bow down to the second Buddha, Padmasambhava, and Jigme Lingpa continues, leader of humankind, lion among men, king of the Shakyas and your heirs, the 6 ornaments, the 2 chariots and so forth, and 2 supreme ones, the sole eye of the world, Shantarakshita, the 7 tested men, Dipamkara, Shakya Shri, the omniscient 5th, and so on. Foundation of the teacher of the teachings, masters of the 3 levels of discipline. How could I not have faith in you? So then, before we paid mainly homage to the Samantabhadra as the embodiment of the great perfection, then Padmasambhava as the embodiment of the teaching and the lineage that comes down to us in the Vajrayana context. And then generally also, for the general Buddhist teaching, then we speak of Lord Buddha, leader of mankind, and so forth. Then we speak of the great masters who taught in India, the 2 chariots being Asanga and Nagarjuna, and the 2 supreme ones. I'm not sure who that is. I'll owe you that. I should really know what that is. So, Ngondro Chomi. Actually, the 2 supreme ones are normally Asanga and Nagarjuna. 2 chariots, not sure. Mind you, we speak about 2 teachings that originate specifically from Asanga and Nagarjuna, which are the mind-only teaching and the middle-way teachings. Anyway, these are all the 6 ornaments, and the 2 supreme ones are all then the commentators that clarified the Buddha's teachings in India. And particularly there's one who is very important and who went to Tibet. And that was the one who really brought together as a single unified vision all the various teachings that you had in India, and particularly in the Yogacarya and Madhyamika. You had then Shantarakshita, who was an immensely great sage and scholar and so forth, who then also traveled to Tibet and taught there. And Shantarakshita then ordained the first Tibetans, and these are known as the 7 tested men. So these are the origins of the establishment of the monastic lineages in Tibet. And then we also have glorious Dipamkara, which was Atisha, who came at a later stage, Shakya Shri, a great Kashmiri Pandit, whose teachings was spread throughout Tibet. And then we have the omniscient 5th, which is then Tsongkhapa. Sorry, not Tsongkhapa, the 5th Dalai Lama, who was a great teacher, who was a treasure revealer, a Tertun, as well as also one of the 5th Dalai Lama. So all these great masters then are the foundations of the teachings. Masters of the 3 levels of discipline mean the 3 levels that we have in terms of spiritual practice and commitments, which is the pratimoksha vow, which is the individual the vows of individual liberation, and that's associated with the monastics, those that abide by the Vinaya. Then we have the 2nd level, which is the discipline and commitment of the Bodhisattva vow. And then finally, we have the commitment of the Vijayadharas, the Vajrayana vows, the Samayas. So these masters all then hold and bring these teachings down to us. So Jigme Lingpa says, how could I not have faith in you? Teacher of the Supreme Vehicle, Lord Garab, empowered and anointed with total dominion by the heroic Lord of Secrets, the 5 eminent holy beings, King Ja, empowered with the 18 volumes of Tantra, Vimalamitra, master of the true lineage of the 3 yogas, Vairocana, and the rest of the 25 disciples, who opened the door to the vast and profound from the treasury of the fivefold expanse, transcending 100 limitations. In you I have heartfelt faith. So this is then specifically for the Nyingma teachings, where we invoke Garab Dorje, the first teacher of the great perfection in this world, and whose teacher in terms was the Lord of Secrets, Guyapati or Vajrapani, who then was the one who had received these teachings from Vajrasattva, and we say these teachings then from Vajrasattva came down from the primordial Buddha, Samantabhadra. And then we have 5 eminent holy beings. We say that after the Buddha passed away, then 5 great beings assembled down at, I think it's called David's Peak, down in Sri Lanka. And they cried out that the teaching has been lost in this world. And it's then said that the 18, or some of the volumes of the Mahayoga then landed on the roof of the King Ja, which is Tibetan for King Indrabhuti. And on the basis of that, then we have the teachings of the Mahayoga that spread in this world. And these are then the 18 volumes of Tantra then that I can't remember if it was a single volume or all 18 that descended upon King Ja's roof. But this is then, King Ja then practiced this, and this teaching then spread. And these are the teachings of the Mahayoga. And the Mahayoga, if we look at Chogyam Trungpa, he refers to this as Ati Tantra. He refers to the 3 inner Tantras, all 3 as Ati Tantra. The Maha, the Anu, and the Ati, because they all come from this place of recognizing this original perfection, using different methods, but all with that same vision. Then we have Vimalamitra, master of the true lineage of the 3 yogas, which are again then these 3, Maha, Anu, and Ati. And then Vairocana, who is a great translator and also a great master of Dzogchen, of the great perfection. And then we have the other 25 disciples then, in addition to Vairocana, who were all close students of Padmasambhava and who upheld Padmasambhava's teachings. And since then, whenever we speak of treasure finders or Tetons, they all then are incarnations of one of these 25 disciples. So all of these great masters opened the door to the vast and profound, which are then the teachings on the vast, the clarity, the manifest aspect of Buddha nature, the vast conduct, and then also the profound view, the insight into lack of inherent existence, emptiness. So from the fivefold expanse, again, I'm not sure what that is, transcending 100 limitations, I'll have to pass on that as well. In you, I have heartfelt faith. The subjects express the 12 divisions of the Buddha's teachings. These are then the sutra teachings and various other kinds. I'll put a list of these up on in the reading material. Anyway, you can find it in the Rigpa Wiki. So all these are different sections of the Buddha's teachings. So the subjects express the 12 divisions of the Buddha's teaching and their meaning: emptiness, devoid of inherent existence, comprise the Buddha's teaching of transmission and realization. In the snowy land, the one who clarified and mastered these teachings was the omniscient Lord of speech, to be sure. So all these various teachings of the Buddha, they have one sole intention, and it is to enable sentient beings to no longer be caught in their delusional fixating on that which has nothing that can be fixated upon, meaning the mind and the perceptions. So all of these mistakenly sentient beings hold as real, And with the teachings of emptiness, we go, doesn't the teachings point to the fact that we cannot grasp anything absolute or cannot objectify or fixate anything in terms of the mind and phenomena. So that's why the Buddha's teaching is so important. There's so many methods to integrate this understanding, and all of these teachings come down through what we call transmission and realization, which are then what has been heard, what has been taught, all the books, if you like, all the information, and then the realization, which is the important part, that somebody actually on the basis of that gained that insight that the Buddha wished us to see, to understand, to realize. And so these many, many teachings and many, many great masters who realized them have been transmitted since the time of the Buddha, and they came down in an unbroken lineage and came to Tibet, the snowy land, and the one who clarified and really perfectly arranged these teachings, made them comprehensible and so on, was the omniscient Ngagi Wangpo, which again refers to Longchenpa. When the entire range of instructions, the doctrines of Sutra and Tantra, are understood in a single sitting, this is the consummation of the teachings. Uniting with the wisdom mind of Dharmakaya, free of any effort or strain, is the unique richness of Dzogchen, the great perfection. So here, celebrating the profundity of the great perfection teaching, which is that it's not something that is just gradually understood, but it is something that is introduced to and in a single sitting is understood and stabilized and so forth. Now all of that comes then as the pinnacle really of all the various instructions that exist within the Buddhist teachings, the sutras and the tantras. Therefore, Jigme Lingpa continues, among the infinite instructions of this tradition, the common preliminary practice of the 7 mind trainings, I shall carefully explain, using the 3 valid cognitions without falling into the extreme of being too brief or too long-winded. So enabling us to assimilate these teachings, particularly then the teaching of the great perfection, then Jigme Lingpa will set forth the following. And he's going to use what we call 3 valid cognitions, which is 3 ways of validating something as true. And in the Buddhist teaching, we do this generally through 3 ways. This is, in Western philosophy, we call it epistemology, and it's the science of knowing what can we actually accept as true. It's not really going to help if somebody says it's true because I says so. If we have somebody we really trust, maybe. But to generally hear that, for the most people, particularly modern people, that sort of sets in a little bit of a reaction. If somebody says, it's true because it says so in the holy book, then also most modern people, for there's not really such a thing as a holy book. And in general, particularly in postmodernity, we not even sure that we believe that anything is true. So the whole problem of, or rather, you could say, for the modern person, particularly, truth and what we could call valid cognition is actually problematic. In the Buddhist teaching, there is a sense that, yes, it's true. Ultimately, nothing can be objectified as something tangible. And as such, yes, the notion of the pigeonholing of reality into some label is very problematic. So from absolute truth, definitely. But within relative truth, there is some sense that, your relative phenomena, they do have certain truth. You could say in absolute truth, there is no such a thing as Australia. There's no such a thing as America. There's no such a thing as Jakob. But at the same time, it would be a lie if somebody came in here and said, are you Jakob? I would be lying if I said no. If there's 100 people lined up and there's a roll call, I'll have to say, are you Jakob? I would be lying if I said no. So on relative truth, we do operate with what we can call valid cognition. But there's also invalid truths, obviously. So what we generally base our accepting of what is valid truth are then what we can call empirical truths, or what we can observe directly. And that's just fairly straightforward. I'm sitting here looking at a computer, right? You're sitting looking at a screen. There is a screen in front of you. That's what we call valid cognition. Then there's inferential logic, which is things that we can't see, but we can assume that they're there. Right now, I can't see the wall behind me, but it was there when I looked last, and I can assume it's still there. If I see smoke rising from behind the building across here, then it's probably valid to say there is a fire somewhere. So that's what we call inferential logic. And then finally, also, we do talk about the valid cognition of scripture, which is when we can trust somebody, then we actually accept them as being authorities on a particular matter. So even though I've never seen Argentina, then I have faith in those that tell me that there is such a thing. And I operate a lot, like when I use a map, I operate with the notion that there is an authority that knows better than me, and I rely on that. So we also do operate then with what we call scriptural authority. So these are just to say that when we're approaching this in the Buddhist context, and here I am definitely being too long-winded, when we approach topics and knowledge in the Buddhist context, we rely on these kind of what we call valid cognition. So there's no notion of just accepting blindly some dogma. It's an important point. Okay. The natural great perfection is the victorious summit of all vehicles, with its 6 unique lineages, the infinite number of approaches that comprise the traditions of Sutra and Tantra can be explained in a single sitting. The common preliminary practices of the 7 trainings provide access to the great perfection. So with this teaching, we appreciate that there is lineage. And while we understand that what we're talking about is the absolute abiding, primordial purity that is innate to ourselves and all sentient beings, for us to gain access to that comes through the skillful means of a devotion and the greatness of mind that goes beyond the ordinary grasping ego, the ordinary self that's just caught up in the worry about itself. Then when there is the devotion, there's a greatness of mind, a great respect and a humility and a love, bhakti, that enables this which is intangible and beyond language and words and expression to actually be transmitted to us. And so this comes down through various lineages, where we talk about the wisdom lineage, the sign lineage, the whispered lineage, and then also there's lineage of entrustment, the lineage of Dakini's prophecy, and one more lineage that I can't remember. So in this way, we have these lineages that then come down to us. The content is then the profound resultant approach of the great perfection. And this is where we are approaching this through this common preliminary practices, the 7 mind trainings. Concerning these essential instructions, my own guru, the omniscient Shantapuripa, true representative of the great Master Padmasambhava, stated. So I'm not sure who this is. This would be one of Jigme Lingpa's teachers. This is one of Jigme Lingpa's teachers, but Shantapuripa, but with a Sanskrit name. So he states then, the meaning of all the victorious one's sublime words that lead to the higher realms constitutes the path of the lesser practitioner, while the meaning that is expressed in the various teachings that show how to work toward the attainment of liberation comprise the path of the middling transmission. So one is that we have those that wish to attain the higher realms, and then there are those who wish to attain liberation. These constitute what we call the lesser and the middling practitioners. Eventually we'll see the highest practitioners is those who not only wish liberation from samsara, but also wish liberation for all sentient beings. In light of the classifications outlined here, this particular teaching is grouped under the path of the middling practitioners and below. So this means that at this point we're still operating with the sense that there is the samsara that we need to escape from and attain higher rebirth and also be free from samsara. Eventually then when we engage with the refuge and the bodhicitta, then this then takes us into the higher or the supreme practitioner, which is those then that approach enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Nevertheless, the essence of the path that is taught in the main practice is that of the supreme vehicle, referring to Dzogchen. This is unique to the Dzogchen approach. Considering the inconceivably powerful momentum that is created each time one arouses the motivation of the great vehicle, the Mahayana, the unique feature here is that bodhicitta is cultivated from the very outset of the path. For this reason, there is no contradiction in classifying these teachings as belonging to the path of the superior practitioner. So in that this is done within the Mahayana context, specifically that of the great perfection, then because of the momentum and the nature of this, then it is also a teaching that belongs to the Mahayana, to the great perfection. It is the scope of the superior practitioner. This categorization of the three types of practitioners was taught by the eminently divine Dipankara, referring to Atisha, in his Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, Changchup Lamdran. It was Atisha, a master of awareness with power over longevity, who took on the lifestyle of a celibate in order to propagate the teaching on abandonment and realization, as found in the three collections. So, at the beginning of what we call the second spreading of the teachings in Tibet, the first which was then on the basis of King Trisong Detsen, the abbot Shantarakshita, and Guru Padmasambhava. Then in the 10th century then, and the 11th century, we have a second wave, which originates then with Atisha, or the translator. I forget now the name of the translator. Anyway, this then came in from Western Tibet, and Atisha then demonstrated particularly with emphasis on the foundations of the Buddhist teaching, the Mahayana and the Vinaya teachings, the teachings on the Tripitaka, the Sutra, the Abhidharma, and the Vinaya. In truth, there is no real difference between these approaches, for in essence they are merely different ways of employing certain Buddhist terms. It was this understanding that led to Atisha's approach becoming less prevalent in the ancient translation school. These traditions have been established by those whose penetrating intellect stand up under scrutiny and by the great teachers of the past. Hence, this approach makes it possible to freely explain the teachings by understanding that all the teachings of sutra and mantra should be practiced to the letter. The sutra state, Manjushri, the karmic obscurations of abandoning the sacred Dharma are subtle. Manjushri, to think that some teachings of the thus gone are good and that some are bad is to abandon the Dharma. So we should never think that there is this teaching over here and that teaching and we just want some of it, we don't want the other. Again, particularly then from the great perfection view, then all the various teachings, they really constitute, like from the vantage point of being at the summit of the mountain, all the paths that lead up to the top, they're all equally valid. As this quote points out, at times people become biased towards certain teachings. They form misguided ideas about teachings that are actually completely perfect and employ a whole series of contradictions and lies to prove their inner authenticity. This sets the stage for them overbearingly to belittle teachings on ethics, thinking that the vehicle of the Great Secret does not have a structured path to follow. So this, of course, very often happens, particularly when teachings don't make sense to us. Like if we come across teachings that engage, like in the Vajrayana, body, speech, and mind in various ways, then some people might think, no, that's not Buddhism. And so there is this unfortunate tendency then to think, oh yeah, this is real Dharma, this is not real Dharma. Hearing it taught that all phenomena lack inherent existence, they revile and show hostility towards the authentic path, and form the idea that it is not even Dharma. So this we have sometimes where those that hear the Mahayana teachings on emptiness will say, that's complete, that's not possible, this can't be true, that things don't have inherent existence, that's not possible. So this is where there's some misunderstandings. Hence, this presentation also protects such individuals from the abyss of such extremely negative behavior. So with the teaching that we're going to be presenting here, we're not going to fall into this kind of biased attitude. In certain scriptures, such as the Chitigarbha and Perfection of Knowledge Sutra, the Prajnaparamita, it is taught extensively that the first gateway to interdependent origination is to respect and venerate the teacher and the teachings. As the Samantabhadra Tantra teaches, as a disciple, when you first request vows and teachings from your guru, you should do the following. Wake early in the morning, wash your hands and mouth, and don your garment with scrupulous care. Prepare by carefully distinguishing those Dharma siblings who possess intact samayas and those who do not. Then sprinkle water and sweep the teaching courtyard. As stated here, you should carry out the 3 types of cleaning. Begin by bathing and putting on fresh clothes. Those Dharma siblings who do not hold intact samaya should then be dismissed and skillfully avoided. Finally, in accordance with the season and custom of the land, you should clean the area where the teachings are being held. Now, when we have this awareness of those who might not be holding samaya, this generally is something that, first of all, doesn't really apply in the West, where Buddhism is so new, that the idea of a samaya breaker is always something you should really stay away from. But then again, yes, there is some, this is not particularly sectarian bias, but it's more really just sort of a being skillful in dealing with those that are drawn to the teaching and those who aren't, and then to just be skillful in how to handle it. You might be surrounded by people who think Buddhism is complete rubbish. And so in that case, then just allow them to think that. Don't be sort of too keen to change their mind. And in this way, just have a non-aggressive attitude, but also at the same time not being influenced. So this is what we could call then to be skillful. Next, arrange a lofty throne with a tasseled parasol above and a vast array of outer and inner offerings. In arranging these offerings, it is particularly excellent to speak enthusiastically and have a relaxed mind. Then exhort the Guru to turn the wheel of Dharma by facing him or her and sounding the conch 9 times. All the students should supplicate with love, welcome the Guru with incense and instruments, and request him or her to sit on a comfortable seat. So this is then where we begin the session, then the teaching. Let's just see if there's any questions. A lot of greetings. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good. Yes. Someone says, really feeling so fortunate that I met the precious Guru. Indeed. Can you say that the 3 valid cognitions is known as in modern science philosophy term? Thank you. Yes. Very much. We do operate with the exact same, you could say, epistemic premises in modern science and in Western philosophy. These are what we call empirical observation, logical inference, and these two particularly have preeminence, but we do also inevitably rely on scripture, not scripture in a sense of some mystical formulation, but rather thus, for example, if we rely on the findings of, let's say, Isaac Newton, if we read Isaac Newton, we sort of trust Isaac Newton's, understanding of the standard model of physics, and likewise, if we come across Einstein or Heisenberg, we understand then the way that they're formulating quantum physics as something that is not just out of the blue, but is something that can be relied upon. So similarly, also, we in Western philosophy have what you call authoritative scripture, right? So yes, and this is so important also because of the problem we very often face in Buddhism being classified as religion. Then people might think, oh, it's based on blind faith or cultural practices and so on, which is a deeply, deeply wrong understanding. Anyway, because Buddhism deals with issues that classically is understood by religions or dealt with by religions, then of course it's understandable that this kind of stigma hangs over Buddhism. And the 4RT factor, the teacher, you can just type that again. And the something fact. And the teacher, cognitions. Not sure I understand this question. And the 4th factor, the teacher. Not sure what this question is about. Yeah? The 4th, we sometimes talk about the 3 jewels of objects of refuge, the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, right? And then we also have the 4th jewel, which is the teacher. Huh? Okay. Maybe come back later. So, So in this way, without slipping into an attitude of contempt, set out offerings that will please the Guru and the 3 jewels, arrange a high throne and so forth. So we're making offerings not because the teacher wants these things, but rather because this is an opportunity for us to make merit, basically. So we make offerings. We bow down and we make offerings and so forth. And then it says, then face your Guru and sound the conch to exhort him or her to teach the Dharma, doing so as though you are making an offering. So we very often, when there's a teaching, then if you go to the monasteries or the viharas, then there's very often a conch that's blown, and also the Tibetans are very good with circular breathing, so very often it's uninterrupted, particularly when they play the gyaling. Then again, when they do it with the conch, they usually have 2 of them, and so it's continual. That's very beautiful. It is said that many sentient beings who hear this sound will be liberated from the lower realms. Thus perform these acts with the knowledge that the sphere of activity and skillful methods of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are inconceivable. This is why sounding the conch to signaling the beginning of all sessions is such an important point. If you're around monasteries, then when a great teacher arrives, then in the evening, the first evening the great teachers arrive, they'll sometimes play the gyaling on the rooftop for up to an hour. And this is not just to sort of make a big hoo-ha, but this is because it has this ability to liberate sentient beings and alert that something wonderful is happening. At that time, the Guru should act in a manner that will inspire his or her disciples, as is stated in the Tantra, Clear Expanse. Whether the disciple's devotion is great or small, depend on whether the Guru's actions are good or bad, train in the skillful methods for daily activities, such as walking, moving, resting, and eating. Furthermore, in the context of explaining the Samaya vows from the Ocean of Collected Tantras, it is said, if the master degenerates, there is no way to train another, and both will go to the hell of incessant torment. So again, here then it implies really that this is, you could say, karma, which is generally the result of karma is complex. So while you might say one action would have this result, it's mitigated by so many other circumstances. So of course, we don't, even though we do say that a particular action has a particular result, we also understand that in reality, the effect will always be mixed by many other circumstances. So anyway, the teacher might be ready realized, or then it's not very, yet might not behave in a particular way. So that inspires the students, so that's where they can, some sort of, some misunderstanding can take place. And then of course also it could happen that somebody who was a great teacher degenerates, and then those who follow such a teacher then also will be sort of caught up in the karmic result of that. Thus, one should train, this is with regards to both teacher and student, one should train in acting appropriately at all times. This is especially true when one is teaching the Dharma or engage in a similar activity. One must avoid acting in a careless or inappropriate manner. I think this is more for the teacher. The Tantra of the Clear Expanse states, thus, when teaching the profound Dharma to a disciple who is an appropriate vessel, the Guru should behave as follows. Sit cross-legged on a comfortable seat. Visualize yourself as the primary mandala of the vehicle that you are teaching, and imagine that all the 6 classes of beings, without exception, appear in an instant before you. In accordance with their native languages and mindsets, teach the Dharma of the great vehicle and arouse bodhicitta. Politely request all benevolent Dharma protectors to help promote goodness and keep obstacles at bay. Commission each with enlightened activities. Leave the middle of the Dharma assembly empty and imagine that all the forces of good, humans and non-humans alike, listen devotedly to the Dharma. So this is then the comportment of the teacher. And of course the teacher should present in a dignified manner and also teach according to how the students could actually understand it. So this, of course, also is reflected in how we have so many different styles of Buddhism, because people come from different cultures with with varying mindsets. But the content remains the same. It's just the styles and the way and the methods might differ. And then also the great gurus, they would employ the Dharma protectors. And also they would leave a space in front. So very often when there's a teaching happening, then there's some space right in front of the teacher that's left empty for those that we can't see. The humans and non-humans who also practice the Dharma. With your eyes, gaze upon all the students and place your hands in the mudra of teaching the Dharma, like this, or meditative equanimity, uttering pleasant words, lucid and clear, explained by interweaving examples, their meanings and rationale. In a step-by-step manner, teach the vehicle and approach that best match the capacities of the students. The traditional teaching the Dharma as outlined here provides a framework for the vehicle that is taught. To start, you should abandon all careless bodily activities, such as leaning to the side, lying down, and so forth. To prepare for the teachings, place your hand in the mudras of meditative equanimity and teaching the Dharma, the left and right respectively. Oh, well, if that was the case, then that would mean the left hand is in the mudra of equanimity and the other hand in like this, possibly. When you're teaching the preliminaries, visualize yourself as Shakyamuni And when you're teaching the main practice, meaning the Vajrayana, visualize yourself as the Lord of the mandala that is specified in whatever tantra, scripture, or key instruction you're teaching. So if somebody's teaching Vajrakilaya, they would see themselves as the main deity of the Vajrakilaya mandala, or Manjushri, or whatever the deity might be. Then lay a foundation for the teaching with the momentum generated by the intention to bring all sentient beings to a state of complete purity. So this is where the teacher is coming from. The teacher would not teach to be famous or to have monetary gain, but exclusively coming from a place of wishing to bring sentient beings to liberation and enlightenment. At this point, imagine that all the 6 classes of sentient beings have come to listen to the Dharma and are seated before you. In particular, leave an empty space in the middle of the teaching courtyard and imagine that all benevolent non-human beings are gathered and are respectfully listening to the Dharma. Then commission the enlightened activities of pacifying obstacles and promoting goodness. You should also recite demon-annihilating mantras to deal with the desire realm gods and their cohorts. According to the sutra requested by Sagarmati, such mantras render these forces incapable of creating obstacles for up to 100 yojanas, meaning very wide sort of perimeter. Abandon thorns to the ear, such as speaking too slowly, too quickly, or unclearly. That's interesting, yeah? Thorns to the ear. Speaking clearly, lucidly, and pleasantly, explain the connection between the examples, their meaning, and their underlying rationale. Explaining statements of definitive meaning from the outset and engaging in the activities of union or liberation while still harboring doubts oneself will make the mind of the disciple intractable. So we should avoid sort of proclaiming too much the highest view or some of the particularly radical practices of Vajrayana, which is the scope really of the highest yogis. For this reason, such things should be avoided, as stated in the Tantra of the Clear Expanse. When a guru cares for a student, the novice student endowed with faith must be guided skillfully at the beginning, until the essence of the definitive meaning has been grasped. Teaching on both cause and effect should be taught, with stories, metaphors, treatises, songs, and the like. Cultivate weariness with samsara, and explain the suffering of the lower realms, the excellent qualities of the Buddha, and other such topics. The guru should conduct himself or herself with care, for if he or she is caught engaging in union or liberation while uncertain, the small-minded will lose faith and be left behind, and the student will receive no other blessings. So this is then where the teacher initially has to speak about the defects of samsara and the qualities of liberation. And also the teacher should avoid engaging in advanced Vajrayana practice if he or she perhaps doesn't actually possess the confidence that requires. Therefore, be aware that this contemplative practice is an extraordinary skillful means for training the mind of the novice practitioner. So I would say for us who come from particularly the modern culture, where we weren't brought up with Buddhism, the notion of novice practitioner, I think we should equate with what we call Zen mind, beginner's mind. I think we should take great pride in seeing ourselves as novices. And in fact, a lot of the greatest masters, they would refer to themselves as novice practitioners. At the time of the main practice, the same text reads, unravel and explain the Vajra verses. Group and explain the disarrayed tantras. Straighten and explain the coils in the transmissions. Differentiate and explain the words and significance of the true and concealed intents, the intent for future entry. The provisional and definitive meanings, and meanings of the essential and non-dual of the tantras, scriptures, and key instructions. So this refers to all the various ways in which the tantras are taught, and some of the ways that tantras are taught have hidden meaning or hidden intentions and are taught in particular ways, and that's where the teacher has to be quite skillful really in presenting this so it's completely clear to the students what is talked about. Without pointing your finger in the dark, the teachings should penetrate the student's mind, just like enabling a blind man to see. Practical experience will lead to conviction. So as stated here, Vajra verses should explain with intent of the true lineage, and the disarrayed tantras should be grouped together like pearls of string. Like we have many different tantras in different places, but there's the logic and the you can say logical sequencing and so forth should be clearly grasped by the teacher, and then it should be presented in a way that's clear and not confusing. Straighten the kinks in the transmissions like a snake relaxing its coil. Reveal the hidden key instructions like the sun clearing away darkness, and use logical analysis to differentiate the transmissions and significance of the provisional, definitive, and concealed intentions. The four rivers of special transmission that flow through the ancient translation school and the undiminished continuity of the teaching of the sutra, illusion, and mind should be explained as taught in the omniscient Lord of Speeches, ocean of instructional treatises. Now, I would say this is really the scope of a very great teacher. When we're talking about all the various tantras here, these are not easily accessed, and of course Jigme Lingpa was extraordinary in his ability to do exactly that, and he clarified so many of the great teachings in various commentarial writings. Extraordinary ability, and particularly then he's here talking about the teachings of the ancient translation school, the Nyingma, where we specifically have what came down from Padmasambhava, basically the teachings of Maha, Anu, and Ati, but specifically with reference to these teachings as Sutra, which refers to the Anu Yoga, the illusion, which refers to the Maha Yoga, and mind, which refers to the Ati Yoga. So these teachings have been taught by the omniscient Lord of Speech in his teachings, meaning that's again referring to Kunchen Ngagi Wangpo or Longchenpa. So both Longchenpa and Jigme Lingpa were extraordinary in their presentation of these teachings. But of course also they are saying that it applies, that anyone who then teachers should really do so that the students, they remain with a sense of clarity, just like if somebody who couldn't see all of a sudden sees. So, the fourth factor of cognition, the teacher. I'm not sure where that comes from. I think it sounds, I'm not sure, I don't really understand the question. The teacher, the fourth factor of cognition. When we talk about valid cognition, we are referring to what can be seen, what can be inferred, and also scripture. Now, sometimes we have an additional valid cognition, which is what is called yogic valid cognition, which is then what ordinary beings cannot possess. And maybe that's what you're thinking about, which is then the scope of realized beings. So, for example, we read how the bodhisattvas, they can perceive countless realms within a single mote of dust, or the sort of unobstructed seeing of past, present, and future of great beings and so forth, or even just in small ways. Recently, Rinpoche was, well, just things that we very often hear that are extraordinary, which really come from a lack of obscuration. So that's what we can refer to as the fourth valid cognition, which is called yogic cognition. So that's not really the teacher, but it is it is something that very often a teacher would possess. Jakob, I'm wondering who you received these teachings from. Just curious about the lineage. Principally, Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, and then also over the years, many other teachers as well. I'm very indebted to teachers like Tuku Pema Wangyal, and of course Songtse Khyentse Rinpoche, and then just hearing teachings from great masters. I had the fortune to encounter a lot of really wonderful teachers, particularly then in the Nyingma and Kaji context, but primarily then Songtse Gyalrong Khyentse Rinpoche and Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche and Dudjom Rinpoche. Good, wonderful to have these insights into the subtleties and methods of great teachers. All right, thank you. So, shall see you again next week. Oh, let's see. I had some dedicated, didn't I have the, hold on, steps to the great perfection. I think I had some dedication in here. Oh well, I can't seem to find it right now. Mind you, we have it actually in the text. I'm just going to go back to here. Through this virtue, may all beings throughout existence awaken together without a single being left behind in the pure realm of the luminous essence, the ground of the great perfection. May they remain inseparable from the kayas and wisdoms. Thank you.